Welcome to the Site Advisory Group meeting. This is our fourth meeting online, and I just realized today that if we don't count the tours, we have actually met more online than we have in person. So I want to express my sincere appreciation for your continued participation. And now we've been meeting for an hour online previously, and sometimes a little longer. So to allow more time for discussion tonight, we are extending the meeting to 1.5 hours. So I hope you all can stay for the entire meeting. Let's look at the agenda here. Okay. So let's see here. See, there's some chat. I just want to check here. Okay, Dean here, really bad reception, much better. We will stay. Great. All right. So for the agenda this evening, we'll start with some introductions and a brief project update from David Peters. Then we'll turn things over to Ken and talk about the pipeline planning progress. And we'll be sharing some highlights from your survey feedback and discuss some of your ideas and input as a group. Now, I know you are all experts at Zoom, but let's go to that next slide though. There we go. We won't go into too much detail. I know we do have some new people on this call that haven't had time to actually get into the Zoom meetings with us yet, but if you are not talking, then we ask that you not have your mic on and you mute your mic, and then you keep your webcam off when you're not speaking. But when you are speaking, please feel free to turn your camera on and definitely turn on your microphone. When you have ideas to share, you can raise your hand using the hand tool, or you can type into the chat. We will also be pausing along the way of this meeting to invite input. So let's go to the next slide. Let's see, that's right. Tonight, as part of our introductions, we're going to test out something new and use the live polling feature in Zoom. In a moment, you'll see a pop-up window on your screen with multiple choice question. Go ahead and select your response and then click the blue submit button. We want to make sure this works for everyone, and if everything goes smoothly, then we will have 2 more brief surveys planned during our meeting. We will, after you finish the polling, then we will have our round of introductions, and you can tell us exactly where you fit into this poll. Is everybody getting their poll information in? But you can let me know when you...
Yeah, it looks like we have 9 of 16 have voted so far. So maybe just a couple more seconds and then we can close it out.
All right, so we'll give you some time. Don't feel pressured that there's a time crunch here for it. We won't play the Jeopardy music as you're trying to figure it out. So just take your time, find that poll, see if you can answer it. And if it works out for everybody, then we can continue the polling throughout this meeting. And keeping in mind, we do have a few people that won't be answering the poll, presenters here today. But okay, it looks like I got some results here. How long have you lived in the area? It looks like 44% of you have lived in the area for 5 to 20 years, and more than 20 years, more than half of you have. That is pretty impressive. And no one has been there less than 5 years. That is really great. So let's go through the introductions here. I'm gonna start with, let's see, Mike C. So tell us your name and then let us know how you fit into the poll.
This is Mike Cowan. I'm live over here on Carpenter Lane and I've been here 15 years.
Wow. Have you noticed any significant changes over those years?
Not a whole lot.
Okay, good to know. Pat. Oh wait, there's a couple Pats online. So Pat H. welcome. This is your first Zoom meeting, by the way. I just want to welcome you back to the group here. I know you've been busy.
Yeah, it's been a very busy spring. Patrick Holt, local businessman, farmer, nurseryman, whatever you want to call me. I'm actually third generation on this property, so been farming here. Not many changes other than traffic. They've found Cottrell Road being a thoroughfare from Sandy to Interstate 84. That's about it.
It's good to know. Thank you, Pat. Sean.
Hello. There's a video. Sean with Surface Nursery. I guess we've been farming the area. Well, I personally been in the area for 35 years with the nursery. So I live up on Mount Hood, but I've been in the Sandy Mount Hood area for almost all my life.
Yeah. Didn't you tell me at one point you lived near Dodge Park?
Yes, I grew up on the Sandy River just upstream from Dodge Park. So that my childhood was actually right there. Yes. So I'm very familiar with the Water Bureau and that sort of thing.
Good, good. Well, thank you, Sean. How about Pat W? And Dean. Sure. We can't hear you if you're talking, but it doesn't look like you're muted. Maybe you want to, I know you said you're, oh, Dean and I are retired and have lived in the area for many years, Pat says. Thank you, Pat. Hope your internet connection gets a little bit better. Let's see. How about Carol?
Okay, I'm Carol Coast, and my husband is here too. We've lived on Carpenter Lane for about 26 years altogether.
Wow.
You want to know?
No, that's great. Have you noticed any changes over the last few years that you've been there, or I guess not a few
No,
years,
not
a lot of
really.
years.
Pretty much stayed the same.
Good. All right, Pat F.
Okay. Hi, I'm Patricia Fiedler, and we come this fall, we'll be here almost 8 years. Kind of feel like a newcomer with everybody.
Yeah, I know. You're just a baby in this crowd.
I am a little baby.
Thanks, Pat. Jane.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jane Whitehead, and we have been in this area for more than 40 years. And yes, it's changed because there's more nurseries in the area closer to our home, and obviously more houses, because we were one of a few new ones, and now we're obviously one of the older ones.
Yeah, a lot of development happening everywhere. I know there's restrictions out there too, though, so hopefully you don't get too many people out there. Dan. I don't even know if you live in the area. I know you work in the area.
Let's see, video settings. Here we go. So Daniel Newberry, Executive Director for Johnson Creek Watershed Council. And although I don't live as close to the project site as most of the people here, I do live in the Johnson Creek watershed and have been in the watershed for the last 5 years. And just as a note, recently our Watershed Council just had its 25th anniversary. So we've been around working on watershed issues for 25 years.
Well, let me ask you this. Has the watershed changed over the last 25 years?
It's changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Been a lot of development, and salmon are coming back to the watershed, and the water quality's improved, but still a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Or Daniel. I think you go by Daniel, not Dan, right? Okay. All right. Let's see, Rosemary. Oh wait, you're with Mike. Did you have anything to add?
Nope, she's upstairs, just me.
Oh, okay. All right, and Andrew, welcome back.
Thank you. You can see me, Andrew Brown, Interim Executive Director with the East Multnomah Soil and Water Conservation District. I don't live in the immediate vicinity, but our organization does work there.
Great. All right, thank you, everybody. So we'll move on to our meeting, through our meeting agenda here, and bring on Dave to give us a project update.
Okay. Thank you, Benita. I just wanted to say it's good to see you all again. We do appreciate you being with us each month here to get a date and to work with us on these important topics for us. While I don't live in the area, I guess I was been thinking about the area. I've been in the Portland area for more than 40 years, and I took my wife out of Colton, Oregon, which is just south of this area here, and so we're familiar with the area and been hanging around these areas for a long time also. Just wanted to provide a quick update on some of the activities that have been going on. I think I mentioned we're still working from home. Our team had transitioned back in March to doing all of our work from home, and that's been going fairly well. I mean, these meetings are hard, as you found as you've been working with us, but we're still able to create some good conversations, so we appreciate the input. But all these activities we've been working on from home. So yesterday, our city council approved the construction contract for the corrosion control improvements. So that's going to be the improvements that we'll do to our existing Lusted Hill site to adjust the chemistry of our drinking water. And that's another compliance order that we have with the Environmental Protection Agency and Oregon Health Authority to have in place before April of 2022. And so that work will get started here in August, September, and we'll be working there through April of 2022. So a little over a year to get those improvements done. And that's a much smaller project, so that not a lot of construction activity related to that necessarily. We've been continuing to work with the Environmental Protection Agency on a loan agreement through the WIFIA program, the Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act. And so we have submitted our application for a loan with them, and they've provided some draft loan terms, and we've been negotiating that loan with them. The hope for that would be that by about October or so, we would hear on approval for that loan. We've been continuing to work on pre-design activities for the filtration facility. You may recall that we got the designer on board back in January, and so we've been having lots of meetings and workshops to understand the treatment processes and what it would take to get those installed on our site. And so as we go through those workshops and conversations, all the feedback we've been getting and the work we've been doing with you, we've been passing along to our designers and incorporating into the choices that we have to make on our process. And all of that is in an effort to put together what we call a basis of design report that will capture all of this information and actually get to the point that we have clear direction on what we're going to design. So that we'll have feedback on how we anticipated laying out on the site and accesses and how the processes will be laid out. So all that will be coming together in a draft report in November. And then it'll take several months to get to a final report just after the first of the year. And then in an effort to keep things moving along, I talked about working with the filtration facility designers. We also did interviews of pipeline designers, And so we are in the process of negotiating a contract with a firm called Jacobs Engineers to do the design on the pipelines to the plant and from the plant. And we also interviewed contractors for the construction of the filtration facility. And so soon we'll be making an announcement about the selection of the construction contractor. So our team's been busy, lots of varied activities going on as we move forward, but all of your input is helping us to through all these processes. Next slide. So also wanted to just do a quick summary of last month's meeting. Last month we started talking about architectural styles and the entry to the site and how we might secure the site. And so some of the concepts that we came away with during that conversation were summarized here. So we talked about the architectural styles, and we found that you preferred kind of an agrarian, more rural type of structure, not so imposing as such large barns and things like that, but more agrarian in terms of the use and how it fits with the use and the local topology. Also showed a preference for some Pacific Northwest styles in terms of materials and things like that. We talked about the use of natural materials, so more the woods and preferences that we see kind of in Northwest facilities. We talked about integrating the facilities into the landscape to kind of hide some of the features and make them fit more naturally into the environment that's there. We talked about having a entry that's set back from the roads, so it's not imposing. Come up to the facility, but it's back away from where folks might see it. So you have to actually go up to it and know where you're going to be able to get to our facility. And we also talked about fencing styles, and we definitely heard that rock wall styles didn't fit in the area, but there was a general preference for more wire or wrought iron types of materials for the areas that we have to have fence. But even with the fencing, we talked more about how that might blend into the natural landscape also, and not be an imposing feature. And which is kind of the last topic, which is making the facility as unobtrusive as possible. So all of those elements our architects are thinking about and incorporating into their next steps. And I think it is next month that we plan to have back to talk about that next step and how they've used some of this information to begin to put thought into how this plant might lay out. So I think I got one more slide here. This is a throwback to our first couple meetings where we got your feedback on the types of issues that you're concerned about as we move forward with the facility like this. And so you can see by the dates there that we've been working to chip away at those various topics. So this month we're with the talking about the pipelines that kind of fits into the property and infrastructure that it takes to build into this facility. And next month, as I mentioned, we'll be back with some of the this says wildlife and environment. I think some of the return on the architectural elements also. So, and there's activities planned through the end of the year to continue talking on some of these topics and provide you updates on topics that we've touched in the past. So I think that's what I had. Maybe pause and see if there's any questions about any of that. Or...
Well, and actually, before we move on to Ken, I embarrassed. I completely missed Joel when we were doing the introduction. So Joel is also on the pipeline team. He's one of our consultants that are working with Ken. So Joel, you want to introduce yourself? And you can tell us how long you've been in Oregon. How about that?
Sure. Yeah, I work with the team. I work for Brown and Caldwell, who's a consultant who's on the program management team, and will be with the duration of the project to completion. And I've been in, I was born and raised in Gresham, Oregon, went to Gresham High School, and I went to Portland State University, but I've been in Oregon my entire life. So.
Good. Yeah, me too. I feel like we're one of the few, but what I'm figuring out now is that maybe all of the native Oregonians live in Sandy. That's probably what's happening, I think. There's a lot of years in Sandy. And Ken, he's going to be doing the presentation for the pipeline planning progress. So, and Joel's just here to support him if there's any additional questions. So Ken, introduce yourself, and you can also let us know how long you've been in Oregon before we get started on that presentation.
So my name is Ken Ackerman. I've been in Oregon, I'm trying to think, 28 years, so more than half my life. But moved here from Alaska. I'm not a California import or anything, so I moved here from Alaska when I graduated from school. So, and actually went to Oregon State University. So, Ken Ackerman, I work at Portland Water Bureau, and I'm the project manager for the pipeline portion of the project, and been with the Water Bureau just a couple years. So excited to be on this project and see this portion get designed and completed. So next slide. So hopefully this is familiar to everyone. This was sent out in a mailer late last fall or in the winter to about 1,000 people. When we were looking at the corridors for the pipelines, and we had a city council resolution last November to construct 2 pipes into the plant and 2 pipes out of the plant. And I'm going to define some terms right now because I'm going to use them whether I define them or not, and so people know what I'm talking about. I'll talk about raw water pipes, and those are the pipes coming into the plant from on the lower terrace into the facility, and then the finished water pipes are from the filtration facility tying back into our existing conduits. So if I say raw water and finished water, that's what I'm referring to, is either upstream or downstream of the filtration facility. So, so this is the area that we've been studying for the last 8-9 months, looking at alternatives, and we'll get into some of the work that we've been doing and a few slides down. So for the next slide, so we've been in this area for over 100 years, actually over 125 years. Our first pipe was installed in the area about 1893 with additional pipes in 1911, 1925, and then our newest pipe, at least main pipe that's taking water from Bull Run to downtown was put in 1953. So it's been a while since we constructed a new pipe through the area. But each of those pipes was put in with the best technology at the time. Some of those are with horse and buggies being put in. But every pipe was a slightly different technology at the time. We plan to use the latest technology that's available at this time to put our pipes in. When any of these pipes were put in, there was no real discussion about landslides. There was certainly no earthquake resiliency discussions at all. We didn't learn about earthquakes in the Pacific Northwest until really in the 70s. So the pipes that were there didn't take that into consideration. Corrosion has been something in the pipes, is something that's been newer. And we've done some work on that to extend the pipelines that are there. And we're still using 3 of those 4 existing pipes. And the 4th one, the original one that went in, is actually kind of still in use. It's being used as a sacrificial anode, so that actually corrodes rather than the pipes that we have. So the new piece of the system, we will be putting in 2 pipes to have some resiliency. And and reliability, so we can actually take a pipe offline and do work maintenance on it. So, and hopefully we'll put these in with modern equipment. So big excavators. We have some pictures of what that would be look like down a little bit further. So our schedule, we are currently in the planning stage. We'll be wrapping that up, and the end of the planning stage is when we have a preferred alignment. So we are working to get that done now. We'll be working on that through the fall. And that's the project definition report. We'll have a preferred alignment for each of the 2 pipes into the plant and each of the 2 pipes out of the plant to tie into existing. So right now we're working on that. We're also working on getting our design firm on board. And the goal is to have them on board right around the first of the year. That will give them about 24 months to do the design. And during that process, we'll be hiring, similar to the filtration facility, we'll be hiring our CMGC contractor, and so we can get their input in the design as we go along. And then construction starting in 2023. A majority of the construction will be done in 2023 through 2025. Then there'll be a little bit of follow-on work. Just as the filtration facility comes online, we need to make those final connections and cut the connections that go through the existing conduit in the area that we're going to be abandoning. So we can go to the next slide. So early in planning, we looked at a bunch of possible routes, and on the left-hand side of your screen is the raw water side. So coming from Bull Run, this is closer, the large blue squarish shape up top is the Carpenter Lane site. And then on the right-hand side, that the Carpenter Lane site is in the lower left corner. And I'll ask at this time, can everybody see the different colors and different alignments on these maps? Because we kind of relied heavily on different colors to show different alignment options. So if everybody...
Yeah, nice and clear.
Okay. We've done presentations and realized that people couldn't see colors and wanted to make sure that it was easy to see. For the raw water side, the lower area is kind of the middle plateau coming up from the Sandy River, and then this comes into play later that we're trying to get up to that upper plateau with that steep slope in between. And now these were early on options. We kind of looked at these and looked at fatal flaws with a lot of these alignments. And a lot of these alignments kind of fell away with fatal flaws, whether it was geotechnical hazards, seismic hazards, environmental. So a lot of these options have dropped off, and we'll look at some of the final options that are still on the table as we get into those a little bit further down. So.
Hey, Ken, we're going to pause for a minute here. I see Pat has his actual hand up. I should have mentioned that a little bit better since you're new to the group, but there is a raise hand function, and you go to participants.
Yeah, I cannot find it. I've looked everywhere on this
problem.
screen, but
showing up, raising your hand, that works too.
All right. So Ken, I got one question for you on the raw water lines. I see the blue and the green lines are the only 2 that are going out of the picture. Are those coming directly from the headworks, and the purple, red, and yellow just coming off the existing pipelines? Is that what it looks like?
So the blue and the green are coming off of the Hudson's intertie, which is just outside the picture, down Lusted Road.
Okay, yeah, I know where it's at.
Yep. The blue and the purple would be a new connection at the Dodge Park Boulevard.
Yep.
And then the orange connection way at the top would be would have been a new connection into the existing conduits.
Okay, and then I got one other question, because I'm sorry I've missed a number of meetings due to my busy spring. on the discharge side, your maps end at Oxbow Drive and Division. Are you planning on connecting to the existing pipelines there? Or are you going to keep on going eventually all the way into Portland?
For now, that would be the maximum extent of where we're looking at tying into the existing pipes.
And then and connect in down towards the Glendale Farms property at the corner?
We actually have pipes in 3 locations there. We have a pipe in Lusted, we have a pipe at Pipeline Road, and then we have a pipe in Oxbow. So we'd actually have connections at all 3 of those locations.
Got you. So, yeah, I've hit a few of them with backhoes over the years, so I know where some of them are. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions while we're looking at this map?
I don't see any hands, so we'll keep going. I'll let you know.
Okay. So as many of you know, we've been out this spring. Yeah, I guess spring, looking at things. So this is a photo from one of our field days when we're doing our social distancing. We all have masks on, so we actually met at Hudson to kick off that day of work and make sure everybody was healthy. And we weren't taking temperatures at that point, but doing questionnaires. So kind of looking at what we've been doing. We've been continuing to do outreach to neighbors along alignments and talk to people, and doing meetings like this to inform our decisions. We've done a lot of field survey work and office research on surveys. And you've seen Portland Water Bureau crews out doing survey work. We've hired a consultant to help us do some of that work. They've been mostly working on the finished water side. So they've been out in the field doing mapping. We've done geotechnical investigations, and that involves a lot of, we've done borings that go fairly deep, drilling holes out there. You've seen some drill rigs on a number of different properties and in the right-of-way, and they're looking at the soil conditions along those alignments to look for where groundwater is, if there's been landslides, what types of soils are there, because the different soils have different strengths and will react differently in earthquakes and seismic events, as well as if there's been landslides there and how they react. They're also looking at environmental when they drill those holes. And some of those holes we've actually put monitoring on, so we can actually look at where the groundwater is, and they check them I believe it's once a quarter, and note where the groundwater is, so we can know where it is over time, rather than just at the day that we drilled it. So, and that's why we're getting on some of those properties. Somebody goes out and checks it every quarter, and there's a recording device there. So we're also doing environmental studies, and that's a very big, broad thing. So we've looked at wetlands. We've looked for endangered species, and that's endangered plants and endangered animals. We've looked at those through the corridor, and some of that's been paper research, just on document what's there, and then actually checking things in the field, as well as hazmat. And hazmat is everything from oils, gas, herbicides, fertilizers, any of those that are in the area, and some of those that have not been used for a long time. We're looking at those, and a lot of that's just looking at those to know what we can do with the material once we excavate it, and where we can place it, because there's a lot of rules on that, and just so we know what's there. The other thing we're doing is cultural resource assessments, and that's with the WIFIA funding comes a lot of restrictions with historic structures, and historic structures is anything over 50 years old and of significance. So there's a group that evaluates that, as well as archaeological items. So anytime we've been doing the geotech work and the digging, they've been out there to take a look at the materials that have been dug up to make sure we're not finding anything, as well as there's been a lot of research done in the office on documented sites just to see if there is anything there. And then we've also been assessing both our existing easement. We do have an existing easement that comes from Hudson and runs west of Lusted Road on the raw water side, across Dodge Park and up a little ways. So looking at the viability of using that easement as well for the pipelines. And that existing easement was purchased mostly in the 80s, but some of it was a little bit after that. And it's approximately 100 foot wide in most locations. It does have a few areas where it does vary. So we're using all of these to develop our, we have our evaluation criteria. We're using all of these to inform our evaluation criteria. Go ahead, Benita.
Yes, we have a question from Daniel.
Thank you. I had an email conversation with Benita about this last week, but on the subject of easements, are you considering a pipeline route at this point as an alternative? Any route for which you do not currently have a full easement path?
Yes.
Okay, so that means that you're either going to have to try to buy easements or do some kind of eminent domain?
Correct. Yes. There is not currently a path where we do not have to purchase some easements. Correct. And this is later on, but now's a good time to answer it. So we have a process that we follow for purchasing easements, and that's a defined process. There's actually state law and federal law that control that. And so we will work with property owners. There's an appraisal done, and then there's an offer made based on that appraisal. And there's negotiations from there, and then there's legal defined timelines for how that works. So.
Okay. So, I've had a little bit of experience with this type of situation with natural gas pipelines. And I know that's very different from the water pipelines, but on those projects, once the easement's in place, let's say it ran through a farm or something, that easement is no longer available to the farmer to use. In some cases, they wouldn't be allowed to drive farm equipment over the easement. Could you explain a little bit about if an easement did have to be purchased over existing farmland, how that would work?
I will discuss it a little bit. I don't want to go too far. We have experts, but I will say, in general, I mean, we have easements out there now that go under farmland. And and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have no intention of buying an easement and putting a pipe under it and not letting farmers farm on top of it. Our intention would be for them to be able to farm on top of it with limited restrictions, I should say.
Yeah. That's correct, Ken. Yeah, we would design our pipe in such a way that running equipment over it and that type of things would be fine for farming and things like that. There would be some restrictions, though. I mean, building houses on top of the pipe would not be possible. So structures and things like that. Growing, we don't let them get reforested if it's an area where there's trees and things that are going to get really tall, several 100 feet or anything like that. Tree roots like to use water lines to feed on, and so things like that. So there would be some restrictions in the easements, but for farming, general home use, things like that would not be restricted typically.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer all your question, Daniel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I don't see any other questions, so go ahead.
Okay. So we have these criteria, and these criteria are common to all the routes we're selecting. So I'll start at 12 o'clock and go counterclockwise. So public health and water quality is the reason we're doing this project. We need to provide safe drinking water. It's the reason we're here. It's the reason we're constructing the whole filtration facility. So that is driving the project. And as far as the pipes go, there's no difference in the pipe alignments that they're going to have on the public health and water quality, but that is why we're here. And we do look at whether we're doing something that might jeopardize that. So second is community interest. We're here. We want input from the neighbors. We want to make sure that we're putting the pipeline in the best location. We want feedback on where that is, how it will be constructed, what it will look like. We will be having things at the surface. We're not just putting things underground. We want to know where that is and how it'll be, and we're going to be here. We've been a good neighbor out there for 125 years. We want to make sure we continue that relationship with people. So resilience and reliability. So I'm going to start with resilience is the ability to recover quickly from difficulties, and reliability is performing well consistently. So for resilience, I think everybody thinks of a Cascadia earthquake. That's one of the issues we're designing for. There's also landslides. There's pipes accidentally being hit, whether it's a contractor digging or something. So we're looking for resiliency. And the best thing to do for that is always avoid the situation. So in seismic events, we're going to look for areas that the soil is going to liquefy. We're going to look for areas that are going to slide, and we'll try to avoid those. So that's the easiest way for us to put the pipe in is just avoid those areas that'll cause us problems down the road. If we can't avoid it, we look to try to mitigate that. There's things you can do to liquefiable soils to try to stabilize them and prevent them from moving. There's construction methods for putting the pipe in that make it a better pipe and more able to deal with soil moving around it to a certain extent. And then the other piece is having two pipes in two different locations. Hopefully they react differently, and that's part of the goal as well. And reliability, that's one of the major reasons City Council said, we need to put in two pipes, because we need to be able to take one down if there's an issue and have the other one still provide water. So that's why we're looking at, for the most part, two different routes as much as possible. And where we're not going to have two different routes, making things as seismically resilient as possible and keeping things stable. So future needs, the Portland area continues to grow at a fairly rapid rate. So we are looking at, what is the need for the future? How can we provide for that need and make sure that we design something that, hopefully is over 100 years old before it needs to be replaced. Looking at the existing pipes, they're 109 years old for the oldest one that's in use. And so hopefully these are around well after at least I'm gone. So the environmental impacts, as I said, we've been doing a lot of studies out there. We look at those. We're trying to avoid. It's kind of similar to resilience. We're trying to avoid the impacts, and then if not, we will mitigate the impact if we need to. But our first choice is to avoid any environmental impacts. Implementation schedule is we have a compliance deadline, and we have a filtration facility that needs to get online. Can we build a selected alignment in time to be able to provide water to them, to get them tested and up and in compliance with the schedule? So if we can't do that, or if there's something in the way, then that doesn't work. So similar to integration with the existing system, we're tying in a lot of these alignments tie in at Hudson because we have an easy tie into the existing system there. There was actually a stub put out of that facility to tie into a future pipe. So, but the other tie-in locations, we're making sure it works with the existing system and looked at that. And the cost benefit is, we look at just the benefit we're getting for the amount of pipe we're putting in, so.
Hey guys, so Pat has a question.
Yep, sorry about that. I'm full of questions always.
We love the questions.
That's right. So, Ken, in listening to you talk here on this last slide, you mentioned pipes in 2 locations. So up to this point in time, I've understood that the pipes are going to go more or less side by side down the same location. So now you're saying they are actually going to be separated in two separate areas, or what exactly are you planning on doing there?
I will ask that you hang on to that, and we'll get down and we'll go through the different locations we're looking at putting them. And then if I don't answer your question, then we'll go back to it. Does that work?
Yep, that's fine, because I have many more questions I'll hit you with. So that's cool.
Okay. And I appreciate your questions. I just want to make, because I think we have a maps that will show what we're looking at, and I think it'll be easier to go through it then. So
yeah, there's just there's lots of speculation and talk going around, and it's good to hear clarification.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other hands or questions?
No, feel free to move on.
Okay. So jump to the next slide, Aubrey. Okay. So kind of getting into, we want to kind of go through what construction would look like and what we're planning on doing, looking at some existing before we start talking about where exactly we're talking about putting them. So we're looking at pipe sizes in the range of 66 to 96 inch. The pipes on the raw water side will be larger because we're trying to lose as much, least amount of head possible going up the hill to the filtration facility. And then we'll have 2 smaller pipes coming out of the facility going to tie into the existing pipes. So generally, we're doing this with open cut, which is what's shown on the right-hand side of your screen. We cut a trench through. We put some rock in to make a nice foundation in the bottom of the trench, and then we put the pipe in, and then we bury it back up. So typically from the top of the pipe to the surface, whether it's in a road or a farm field or anything, is typically 5 feet to 12 feet. We do have locations we will be deeper, but that's from the ground to the top of pipe. So when we have a 96-inch pipe, that's 8 feet. So we could have a trench that's 20 feet deep, and we have several locations will be deeper than that. So, and to give you an idea, the trench on the right-hand side of your screen, that's a 48-inch pipe going in there. The picture on the left-hand side of your screen, this is part of the Washington County program. That's a 66-inch pipe, so that would be the smaller of our 2 sizes. And that's Joel on the right side and me on the left side of that pipe. We were out there about a month ago. So, so the first piece we'll do going through to put in the pipe is we'll clear the site if it's not on a road, and then we would be excavating to put the pipe in. So do you want to go to the next slide? So this is, again, the right side is about a 48-inch pipe. The left side is that 66-inch pipe. So once they dig that trench, they're going to be putting the pipes in. These pipes that are on the left-hand side are about 50 feet long. And just to give you an idea, that sign, the yellow sign there is about a 3-foot square. So that's a big piece of equipment. And they had 2 of those to maneuver that, put down into the trench and put it in there and get it in place. Once they get the pipe in place in the trench, then they have to weld it to the previous piece of pipe. So on that project, they're averaging 1 to 2 pieces of pipe a day. So about 50 to 100 feet of pipe in a day. So after they get it welded, they backfill around the pipe. So around the pipe and just to about a foot over the pipe is always rock material to provide nice compaction and hold the pipe in. Part of the way the what gives a pipe strength is nice rock compacted around it. Then if we're in farmland or in open areas, if it's woods or something, we will put native material back above that. If it's in a roadway, typically the jurisdictions require that we do rock up until we do the asphalt on top. So one of the things we've talked about is a lot on the farmland is taking the topsoil, setting it aside, and then once we're back close to the surface is putting the topsoil back. So that's what we would do if we do an open cut operation. So we want to go to the next slide, I think, yeah. So you'll see when we get to some of the alignments, we're talking about tunneling. These are two pictures of where we tunneled under the Sandy River. The one on the right is actually the tunnel going under the river. The picture on the left is a vertical shaft that we dug straight down and then went horizontal under the river. So we would have a shaft. These are typically fairly decent size. You can see there's a bobcat excavator down there and guys standing there. So they're fairly decent size. So I'm going to go to the next slide. I think this is back to, so this is the backfilling on the left-hand side, and this is actually part of the Washington County supply line. And this is what it looks like when they're done. This was just grass, so they've graded it out and probably will be seeding it. My guess is they'll wait until it's closer to fall so the seed actually germinates and grows. But they actually graded this out. And they did put it off to the side of the road in this location. They have other locations they are in the road. So, so that's kind of how things would go in and what it would kind of look like during construction. This picture on the left is actually Roy Rogers Road. There's some new homes immediately adjacent to it. And then on the right side of the photo and then on the left side, they have traffic there as well. So any questions on kind of what that looks like and how that would roughly work? Okay. So, and I asked this before and I'm going to ask again, everybody can see there's 3 different pipeline alignment colors. There's a red, a blue, and a green. And then there's a couple different patterns. So, okay.
Yep, we can see it.
Good. Okay,
Yes.
so I'll start with this is Hudson intertie down here on the lower side. That's Hudson's intertie down there. So all of our options currently being considered have a connection at Hudson's intertie, and the alignment shown to where it crosses Dodge Park Boulevard and a little beyond there is in the existing easement that we own. It's a 100-foot wide easement, and that's where it's shown. And the reason all the options are there and none of them are in Lusted Road is Lusted Road has all 4 of our original conduits in it or immediately adjacent to it. Some of them are just outside the right-of-way. And it also has an existing water line that services homes in the area in it. So it doesn't leave room for 2 new pipes or even 1 new pipe to be put in the existing right-of-way. So that's why we're showing going up the existing easement from Hudson across Dodge Park Boulevard and past that first tunnel site north of Dodge Park. So we actually have existing easements all the way up to where the green line turns directly west. So all of those are in the existing easement to there. So we would have 1 pipe tying in at Hudson's intertie and running from there to the filtration facility. And that would be the solid line on whether it's blue, red, or green. And then we have the options. And so the blue option would be an open cut pipeline or 2 pipelines up the hill in a shared trench and then across up on top over to the filtration facility. Now, none of these locations are exact. I know there's been some discussion about, is it exactly right there. There could be some shifting there up on top, as well as the south new intertie. There's a number of properties that run from Lusted Road down to our existing easement, and we would determine where that is exactly once we determine if that's the alignment we're going to use. So the red option comes off of the south there, south intertie, and then comes down to the existing easement, and then would be a new tunnel under the hill, and then with a shaft up on the upper plateau, and the pipe would come out there and then run up to the filtration facility. And then the last option is the green lines, and we would do a connection at Lusted Road into the existing pipes, as well as down at Hudson, come up, and then we would do a new tunnel there directly into the site with a shaft up on the site itself. So, so we would have one pipe for most of the alignment, and then we would double up in either the open cut up the hill or one of the two tunnels. So with that, I think there's probably going to be a few questions about what those would look like. So I'll open it up to questions.
All right, Jane.
Okay, Ken, are you proposing that your selection is a red and a green, or 2 reds, 2 greens, and 2 blues?
It would be either the 2 blues, the 2 reds, or the 2 greens.
So are you placing a new pipe then, or are you using conduit number 4, the newest, the 1953 pipe? Are you using that then for the new intertie?
So at the new intertie, either at the north end and the south end, we would probably tie into 2 of the 3 conduits.
Okay.
We're still evaluating the capacity, but we would probably be tying into 2 of the 3 conduits there. So they would stay in Lusted Road to that location, and then from there on would be probably abandoned. So.
Okay, so primarily the newest pipe is going to go through Nelson's nursery for the most part.
So we would have one pipe that comes up through the Nelson's nursery, yes, and then we would have a second pipe tying in at either the north or the south interties there. Yep.
Understood.
Okay, Daniel.
Thanks. For many years, I did a lot of projects with irrigation pipelines and working with easements and all that kind of things. And one of the things that we tried to do was to site those potential easements right on property boundaries, because those are areas where people are less likely to be using it, or they couldn't build structures over it or something. And I'm just curious why a lot of these alternatives cut straight through property tax lots and don't go along property lines where it's potentially easier for some of those reasons.
And so, like I said, a lot of the solid green line and the red and blue where they're all parallel is in the existing easement. And I will say that's done, it's purchased, we own it.
Yeah, right.
So
I'm not talking
that's
about
why,
that. I'm talking about the new stuff, the dotted lines.
So the new stuff, so I'll say for the blue option, for geotechnical reasons and because of the landslide, we need to run perpendicular to the steep slope, which is that pink shade there. So we need to run perpendicular to that. And the red option, we probably could modify that to run parallel to that property line that's just to the south of it there as we get up. We could probably shift that over. Like I said, these alignments are not, set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. And I would imagine tying in at the south intertie, we would run that along a property line there straight south to the existing easement. And then I know I've had some conversations with Sean about where these are located up on their property, and there's a lot of desire to push that to the east property line, and that would be looked at so that it would run right along that east side there. So, but the blue option, I mean, it does come up. It does have to run perpendicular to that slope, which is going to be across properties no matter what we do. So.
Right. Okay, just curious. And I imagine too, if, you know, if you're pursuing like the red option and there's some issues with landowners, they may be more amenable if it did go across the property line.
Correct.
Yeah. So thanks.
Good questions.
Anita, I have a question.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm trying to understand this. So if you were to build the blue, where it looks to me like it's a tunnel construction, and then also the trench. Is that true, both of them? If you were to do blue, or is, because you're doing two pipelines, right?
Correct. So we would come out of, go ahead.
So what I'm looking at here, let's take the blue. So there would be the tunnel option plus a regular trench. Is that right? Next to each other?
Nope. So the blue option, we would tie in at Hudson. We would come all the way up across Dodge Park. And then we would go across and then up the Pink and to the facility. And then we would tie a second connection would be at the south. And I don't know if you guys can read those or not. The south intertie on the Pink, it would come straight south and then come to the existing easement and then head west and up, and they would be parallel from where that comes down to the existing easement.
So
Ken, you may want to explain what there are those short sections underneath creeks, and maybe that may be what she's looking at.
All of them have to go underneath Bear Creek and Beaver Creek, no matter what.
Correct. And it says tunnel. It's subsurface, so we will be digging down and going underneath those creeks. We have 3 locations for that, one down by Hudson, Bear Creek, and Beaver Creek. So is that what you're looking at, or are you looking at the dashed blue line?
Well, yeah, what I guess that because I understand that you're putting 2 pipelines in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when I guess I really apologize for this, but I don't understand. But so when I see this, the blue, I see a solid blue going all the way up to the filtration plant. But next to it, I see the dotted blue also going up there. And that's why
so the dotted blue is also on the surface next to the solid blue. So the dotted blue is just to say that one comes out of the south connection point. The other one comes out of Hudson. So one pipe will come out of Hudson and go all the way up. And then the dotted line comes out of the south and will be on the surface parallel. So
okay, I understand that now. But now the other thing I have is on some of these, you will actually be doing the trench on a road, correct? On a street?
None of these cross streets. So we will cross Dodge Park at we'll cross Lusted right by Hudson. We will cross Dodge Park where there. But other than that, none of them will be running down the streets.
Okay, so just at an intersection.
Yes, correct. Yep.
And when I look at the illustrations you show where the trench is being built, it doesn't look like there's much room for anyone to go around, because when you have the equipment and you have these, because our roads are very narrow. So what will happen there at that intersection? How will you get traffic through?
So we will probably have to close Dodge Park not at Hudson Road, but at Hudson, the intertie, which is just up the street from Hudson Road. We will have a short period of time there where we need to close it. we will have a short period of time where we need to close Dodge Park Boulevard there. And then we will also have to close Lusted to tie into the 2 pipes, most likely north of Dodge Park and Lusted intersection as well. So there will be some road closures.
Do you have any idea how long that what the duration of that closure will be?
I don't. It's going to, I mean, depending on how many pipes we have to tie into and which ones they are north of, on Lusted North, it's going to take months. It will be, it will be a longer period of time. So, yes.
Okay.
And there's, on the finished water side, we do have a lot more pipes in the road. So we'll talk about those up there. So.
Okay,
and I did,
Pat Holt, sorry, go ahead.
One thing I did, so when we looked at those photos of them putting stuff in, typically they like to have 50 to 70 feet of width to be able to put pipes in, and they were putting in 1 pipe, 166-inch pipe. So that gave them room for having people on one side, their crew on one side, the trench, and then the excavator and trucks on the other side. So it does take a lot of width. So.
Right, Pat.
Ken, on a fiscal standpoint, just from looking at the tunneling versus the open cut, I would imagine that the open cut is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper in the long run than the tunnel option. Is that correct?
There is some cost savings with doing the open cut. Part of the issues with the open cut is the top is some liquefiable soils. So we have to do some stuff to mitigate the chances of from seismic resiliency there. Also, we're grade limited at the top by the hydraulic grade line to get to the filtration facility. So we end up being a little bit deeper. There is a cost savings. There is several $1 million cost savings of going the open cut. So yes, there's trade-offs.
Yeah, and you brought up one other thing with the liquefiable soil. Pretty hard to stabilize, isn't it?
Our geotech gave us some designs to look at that, and there was some soil mixing that went down to below that level where the top 30 feet, I think it was 30 or 40 feet, and they mix in different materials depending on what it is to make that soil stay in place. We're also looking at some piles going up each side of that trench to be able to dig. That would be about a 30-foot wide trench, and you'd have to have room on the side of it to get stuff up and down it. So there would be about a swath about 80 feet wide cleared up the slope.
Sure.
And we'd have to have an easement about 110 or 120 feet wide to do some tiebacks that would be under the surface beyond that 80 feet. So,
right. And I take it with mixing of soils, you're talking about, trade name would be like a quicklime or dicolite or something like that to help stabilize the soil in that area, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
And so just to be clear, and I know there's some questions and I think they're on the next slide, but so the two tunnel options, we would have a launch site down at the bottom of the hill where we dig a shaft that's fairly shallow, and then we would dig under Dodge Park Boulevard, and then we'd have a much deeper shaft up on the top of the slope that would go down and meet that horizontal tunnel. So there would be no closures of Dodge Park Boulevard. If we do the open cut option, there's a potential for Dodge Park Boulevard to be closed where that those blue lines cross for upwards of a year to 15 months to get across there. So we'd have access on both sides, but it would be closed at that location for that period of time. And that's based on the contractor that's on board and giving us advice. Potentially could be different depending on the contractor we get that's actually going to do the construction. So.
Thanks, Ken. I just want to do a quick time check. It is 7:11, Slurpee time, I guess they call it. But, we don't want to stop this conversation. And I know that there's a few other questions. People have their hands raised. Daniel had a question about the does the current Bull Run pipeline and that has an intertie? But I think you answered that. Did you get the answer or the question answered, Daniel?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, and Pat and Dean had chimed in saying, you haven't talked much about the possible tunneling north through our property directly to the facility. Could you address the possibility and how it would affect our driveway, etc.?
So the north tunnel, that's you're looking at the green alignment. So that would go directly under, so it would actually start down on the Bissell properties below Dodge Park Boulevard and would go under and would not, it would cross under your property and there would be no impacts at the surface on your property, and then come up. The receiving shaft would be actually on the filtration facility itself. So while we would need to get onto your property during design to do some geotech work, we would not need to get on. Well, they might need to get on to monitor where they're at, but and make sure that things don't move or anything, but they would not need to do heavy construction on your property. Did that answer the question? And I have chat up now so I can see.
Yeah. Would that involve any kind of easement, they ask?
Yes. Just because we're under your property doesn't mean we don't need to get an easement. So there would still be an easement acquired, giving us rights to put that tunnel under your property. So, and I'm not sure if the language would actually be exactly the same, but we would still need an easement, and we'd have to determine if that wording is the same as where we would open cut. So looks like that answered the question.
Yes, okay, thank you, they say.
Yep.
Dan and Pat, I believe your hands are still raised from the last questions, but I want to move on to Jane. If you guys can just lower your hands if you're not having a question still, but let's move to Jane, and if your hands are still raised, we'll come back to you. Jane, you are muted. I don't know if you're trying to talk or not.
Sorry.
Okay.
Regardless, red, green, blue, and whether you tunnel or whether you don't tunnel, you still need the topsoil cleared of all trees for a 30 to 50 foot swath. And what can or cannot be replaced as a planting over the pipeline is other than, okay, bushes, obviously no cedars, no vine maples, no vine alders, trees, and so on. So how would that work on a tunnel? Are you still limited with a tunnel as to clearing the trees in a 50-foot swath?
So we would, on the open cuts, we would remove, on any of the alignment, we would remove the topsoil, set it aside, and put it back over the top. So shrubs and bushes could all be planted, just trees, large trees could not be planted back over the alignment. And that would probably be 25 feet on each side of the actual pipe. So not even the whole 100-foot easement, but the tunnels from the shaft, once we're in the shaft, we would not be taking down any trees or disturbing anything from the shaft up the hill to the site. So I think that was all of your question, if I got all the parts of it.
Primarily, where your tunnels are, yes, there are a lot of cedars in particular. I don't really care about the vine maples and the alders. They break so easily, and that's usually what causes the local area power outages. Where the new tunnel from the Hudson intertie, just after you cross Bear Creek, I think it is. I don't know which one it is, Bear Beaver. When you follow the property lines, across, yes, they're stacked on top of each other now and look pretty wide, but I'm assuming you're going to try and follow the property line. Much of that is bare, but there are cedars and in the way. So a 50-foot swath of any large tree would be removed from that area, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's all the questions for now. So, oh, no, that's just, yeah, just all the questions for now. Go ahead and move forward.
So let's go to the next slide. And I think we've answered a lot of these. So I guess seeing that, you know, we would haul the material off that we can't reuse on site. Property values, there's a lot of things that determine property values. So I don't know that we'll have much effect on that. And I guess one big one that I did want to answer, currently we believe that the tunnel is above the groundwater table that most people have their wells into. We're still trying to verify all of the well depths, but we are sitting above the aquifer. So the belief from our geotech, and we've questioned it pretty heavily on this, is we would not have an impact on the current aquifer that people are getting their drinking water from, that have wells out there. So that's the opinion of the geotech we have now. We will be having another different geotech when we get into the design, and we will be questioning them on the same thing, because we know that is a big concern out there. So let's go to the next slide.
We got a couple questions from, again, from Pat and Sarah. So why don't you go, Pat?
Okay.
Yep, sorry. You talk about the aquifer, but there's actually two aquifers down there. Is that not correct?
You're talking the shallow aquifer that's up on top?
Yep, the shallow Troutdale and the deep Troutdale aquifer.
So we believe with the Walters well, that's the only shallow well that's in the shallow aquifer. Everybody else is down in the deeper aquifer. So as far as the records that our geotech has found to date, so yeah, yes, there is two aquifers. We should not be affecting the upper one either. Our shaft would be tight up on top as well. So we don't want a bunch of water coming down that shaft, but yes, you are correct.
So the shallow aquifer is, if I got to remember right, it's been a long time. It's like 150 foot. The deep one is closer to 600 foot. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. So and you know, being out here this long and having to deal with all this stuff for many years, it seems that the shallow aquifer is much larger, expansive area than just right here. There more than just the Walters well on there. I thought there was a number of wells far away from this property that are on that for their drinking water.
Okay.
Is that not correct?
And not that our geotech has found, but we're continuing to do research, and we'll continue to do research to make sure that we're not going to affect anybody. So yes.
And the deep aquifer, I was always under the impression, and impressions can be wrong, but that it was typically irrigation water for many of the farms around here.
I know a lot of the wells go down into that deeper aquifer, so would not surprise me. Yes. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Jane, not Sarah.
Sorry, I just didn't put my hand down, but I was looking at some of the comments, and what looks to be parallel lines that where all three colors come together. For the most part, there is a lot of clearing that has already occurred on some of those properties, and a new build on an existing property is now further to the south of where the pipeline is intended. So as far as, you know, the red and blue, as far as the green pipeline, yeah, it's going through the Bissell property, but I know Carol and Rick would dearly love not to lose their forest on the green property line.
Yeah. And there is a new house, yes, on right about where it's just a little bit south of where the blue line goes up the hill. So, yes.
A brand new build, or relatively, 1, 2, 3 years, but an existing house has rebuilt a new house now. And so I think the old house may be in the 50-foot swath if you went further to, let's see, it's what, it's kind of the pie-shaped wedge piece of property. That one just built a new house. So the old house, which would have, depending on if you go north or south of the property lines, yeah, you would go through some cedars there, but their new house is in a better position as far as, for the 37077 Southeast Dodge Park address is in a better position now for that. And yeah, you haven't determined the exact line, but
Right. Yeah.
No one's going to be happy no matter what you do. Sorry. It's just the nature of the beast.
It's right. We are putting, I mean, during construction, we are putting a big pipe through there. There is no easy solution. So, yep. So,
Okay, no more questions there. Now, do you want to maybe get to the next slide?
Yeah, let's look at the finished water side a little bit. So here we come out of the filtration facility at Carpenter Lane. So we're looking at 3 different alignments here. We have a blue alignment that runs directly north out of the facility to Dodge Park, west on Dodge Park to about the mid-block, and then straight north to the Lusted Road over to Altman. We have an orange that follows that alignment to Dodge Park and then continues west to Altman and north on Altman. And then we have an option that comes out of the filtration facility, runs straight down Carpenter Lane all the way to Altman and then north on Altman. And so we will be selecting or looking at 2 of the 3 options here to put in pipes. So we'll be picking 2 of the 3 of these to do that. If we do the solid orange and the solid blue options, we would have 2 pipes in Dodge Park. They would be parallel for about 3/4 of a mile to a mile there. But that area is relatively flat, low risk from a seismic standard, and no liquefaction or low probability of liquefaction. So we would put one off to the side and probably one under a travel lane. So so these would be about 66-inch pipes, and from Lusted Altman intersection, we would have 1 pipe currently probably running north up to Pipeline and then up to Oxbow. We might have a second pipe. We're still evaluating it between Lusted and Pipeline Road. So it might be 2 pipes there, but certainly 1 pipe from there north to Oxbow. So that's kind of the options. And I know there was a lot of concern about traffic impacts, and we are trying to evaluate and would like some input on if we put 2 pipes in Dodge Park, we will be closing Dodge Park, and it would be for an extended period of time, upwards of a year. If we put 1 pipe down Dodge Park and 1 pipe down Carpenter Lane, we would probably be able to keep it off of the edge of road, so we would have it closed during the day and then open it at night and on the weekends when we're not working. But that would have a lot of additional impacts on the folks that live on Carpenter Lane, because that's a much narrower road. So we're trying to evaluate those trade-offs between homeowners where we'd be close to them and the general traveling public that's maybe more commuting through the area, or that don't live directly on Carpenter Lane. So we'd like input on that and if there's any other questions.
Before we get to the questions, I do want to do another time check. We are at 7:26, and we had planned this meeting to be a half hour longer than the other meetings, but there's a lot of great conversation happening here and a lot of great questions, and I don't want to stop if people are wanting to stay and talk. We can also have the option of postponing and moving along. So if anybody has any thoughts on that.
How much longer is Ken's presentation? How many more slides?
There's what?
Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 4 more slides. And, part of that's just the survey results and your discussion. Actually, the rest of it's, there's no more maps or anything to look at. It's basically what you've talked about.
Yeah,
I'm okay with, for me personally, just calling it good at 7:30, and I can send my comments directly to the PWB, and we're and as long as the presentation is online, which the last 4 slides will be, no biggie.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else? Pat, and see you have a lot of questions, and Daniel, Carol, I see you have your hands raised now. Do you have a preference on continuing? The Walters say they can go either way.
Yeah, we can continue.
Okay, Pat Holt.
Yep, I'd say go on a little bit longer, see what happens.
Okay. Andrew, Pat Fiedler, and Sean, still there?
I'm fine. I'm fine with going on.
I don't know if anybody, I've personally, the last 10 minutes, I have not been able to see or hear anybody, so it must be my internet connection.
Okay. Well, sorry about that. We will be posting this all online too, so you can always, if you have comments later, you can get back in touch with us.
I did have a question for him if he's still there, or if I'm still there.
Yes, you are still here.
Okay.
And I'm still here.
Finally, I'm back. My question is on the blue line where it goes down Dodge Park Boulevard and then it goes north to Lusted there. Do you know who owns that property there? I'm looking at where our property is in the map and everything. It's kind of hard to tell.
I'd say it's Ekstrom's.
Hello?
I'd say it's Ekstrom's property.
Yes, it is.
I don't know if anybody can hear me. I've lost it again.
We can hear you. Let me see if I can get into the.
It's Ekstrom.
Oh, Ekstrom? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
And that we're looking at running right along that property line. So
you're probably looking at running on the east property line, correct? Because we share the other border.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll continue on for another 15 minutes and see how that goes. And Carol Coast.
Yeah, I have a question. If you continue down Carpenter Lane has no base. So would you be planning to build a complete new road, and or would it have curb and sidewalks to accommodate the running paths out in the facility? And it's not going to be the lane, Carpenter Lane. It's going to be a pretty major road improvement down all the way to Altman.
So the right-of-way width there varies between 30 and 60 feet. And so we would look at getting some temporary construction easements to get it in. We would plan on putting back what's there. Obviously, it would be new road surface, with a base under it and asphalt. As far as what the width would be and curbs and sidewalks, we're looking for input here. We also have to answer to the county. They determine what the road mitigation would be, or what exactly we would put back. So they would also do requirements with our land use application for what gets put back as well. So, so the exact width is yet to be determined. So we'd love input from what people would like to see. I mean, as far as width goes, if we went down there as well.
The one thing, it would totally change this area if we put, you know, I know we're in unincorporated Multnomah County, so it's probably not, we probably don't have to do curbs and sidewalks.
Right.
But it's a real possibility that if we have running paths and, you know, more people out here, that it probably for safety, the sidewalks would be good, but it will destroy our community, you know.
Right.
The rural, you know.
And that doesn't mean that the pavement that couldn't be a little bit wider with some accommodation so that there's a little more room for vehicles and pedestrians. So.
Yeah, but it will change our rural setting big time.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, Mike, you don't want to change that. You want to keep the sidewalks. You don't want to have sidewalks. I know you live on Carpenter Lane, and that would not be something that would be appealing for you.
No, we don't want sidewalks because I don't want to bring any more people out here, you know, to use the paths that might go in on the 100 acres out here.
Right.
Yeah,
I think
we're not looking to do any of that. I think I don't know if you were at the last meeting, but you were at the last meeting where we were talking about paths and, you know, any sort of people. This isn't an open facility for people to come and just peruse around if they wanted to, but, you know, if there were any sort of things out there, I don't know that we would, you know, it's really up to what we're required to do and what the community wants. So that your feedback's very valuable, and hopefully we can get some more feedback from people that live in that area. Let's move on to Pat Holt.
Hey, Ken, quick question on the easement. You said 30 to 60 feet down Carpenter Lane. Well, actually, first, yeah, no sidewalks for me. But on the 30 to 60 foot easement, and I get a little confused on this from time to time, since I don't have to deal with them very often. Is that overall width or from center of road 30 foot either direction, or can you tell me that exactly?
So the existing road right away is 30 feet total width, property line to property line, between 30 foot wide. There's some areas that are 30, I think it's 30, 40, 45, and 60 foot. That's total width of the existing right of way. So we would not purchase existing right of way. We would purchase temporary construction easements to be able to get the pipes in. But that's the existing right of way out there, total width.
Okay, and I have another question you may want to answer later. It's about discharge pipes connecting to existing pipes. I don't know if you want to answer something like that right now or not.
Discharge pipes, let's answer.
Okay, so, you know, you're all talking about the seismic upgrades and separating the pipes so you can shut one down and keep one open. Although they still run side by side for a major portion of this new construction, but then you connect into existing pipelines that are not up to today's standards of construction. So how does that work? I mean, why do we want to keep it proper here and then old down the road?
And I'll answer that, and maybe Dave, we're building this piece of the facility The Water Bureau is currently looking, we did a seismic study for the whole system. We're currently looking at what's needed from Headworks to the Hudson facility, and then we'll also be looking at pipes downstream. So it's a matter of, we can't just go out there and put in 24 miles of 3 new pipes all at once. So this piece will be up to standards. We're doing other projects that are upgrading other parts of the system, and we'll continue to upgrade the system as we go. So, and we're looking at what are the worst parts of the system to upgrade first, to make, to get it all up to date, hopefully before the Cascadia earthquake.
Well, you are correct. In our opinion, this is the worst part that you're doing. So thank you.
Well, and I might add to that. It's it doesn't mean that we're going to be replacing all the conduits from Headworks into town. Many of the improvements are simple improvements to either the ground around the existing pipes or the joints on the existing pipes that will be done over a number of years. So we're looking at between 30 and 50 years in an effort to seismically restrain these pipes. So we're chipping away. We can't do, as Ken pointed out, it's 25 miles into town, there's 75 miles of pipe. We're doing bits at a time. What we're able to do here with this project is replace, what is it?
4 miles.
4 miles times 3, so we're replacing 12 miles of that pipe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, it looks like we have a question from Daniel.
Yeah, so looking at the blue and yellow lines where they split on Dodge Park Boulevard and the blue line goes north, looks like it crosses one of the forks of Middle Fork Beaver Creek. I'm just curious on that and potentially any other locations. Are you still planning on tunneling underneath, or how's that going to work with the, I know we talked about on the raw water lines, but what about on this side?
So I will say we've got 2 crossings no matter what we do there. The crossing in Altman Road, we've looked at that. We've looked at the existing culvert the creek is in, and we believe we can dig under the existing culvert and put our pipe in without disturbing the stream there. And while the stream does show coming all the way up to Dodge Park, our wetland biologist has been out there. We have a very small wetland where we would cut across there, and we would likely have a very small impact there that we would mitigate. The pipe, or the creek, goes into a pipe like 20, or not even 20 feet, like 10 feet west of where we're going to be, and is piped about halfway from that location to Altman Road. So it's mostly in a pipe there, but we would impact a small amount of wetland there.
Okay. I'm just curious, why are there 2 different alternatives here? Is there some issue you're trying to avoid on one of them by creating a new alternative?
So the new alternative being going down Carpenter Lane, yeah, we were looking at ways to limit traffic impacts. So we thought that one of the ways to limit traffic impacts to most of the public was to put one pipe down Dodge Park and put a second pipe down, put the other pipe down Carpenter Lane. That way we could open Dodge Park to traffic at night.
Okay, so this goes back to your question about not sort of the long-term, but about short-term impacts during construction?
Yes, and the other reason we looked at it is seismic resiliency. There is, that desire to have them separated. So we don't believe there's many risks here, but it's always better to have them separated. So that was a consideration as well. So
cost-wise, would it be significantly more expensive to do 2 different lines in different, not in the same trenches?
There is a few $1 million difference between the 2, but it's less than, I think, $5 million difference between putting them separating them versus keeping them together.
Yeah,
so
$5 million sounds like a lot of money.
It is. I mean, but it's not. Yeah, it is. There is a difference. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mike and Carol, did you have another question, or is your hand still raised from last time?
Sorry, no, we don't have another question.
Okay, then let's go on to Jane.
As far as the numbers go, I would say Carpenter Lane is not where you're going to be going, because you have approximately 30 residences along that road. Dodge Park has less than 10, but you do have the Scenic Fruit Farm, which has one of its entrances is directly off of Dodge Park, but I suspect that they could make arrangements to do Altman for a short period of time once you got past, that intersection of Altman and Dodge Park. You'd have to go at least 100 feet of pipe, though, for them to be back open. But I think the impact on Dodge Park, as much as that's a pretty significant thoroughfare, I think Carpenter Lane is a no-go, my opinion.
And that's the kind of input we want. I mean, thank you.
Very valuable. Mike.
Yeah, about Carpenter Lane. When you said you're putting the pipe in, you need at least 70 feet.
So they can do it in narrower. I think on the Washington County piece, I think they went down as narrow as 30 feet. The narrower it is, the longer it takes, because they're more restricted, and which consequently makes it more expensive because they're getting less production per day. So they can do it in narrower. The most efficient way, or the most efficient width for them, is close to 70 feet, between 60 and 70 feet. So
yeah, I was just wondering, because on the west end of Carpenter, there's a number of homes that are very close to the road. You would literally almost have to tear the homes down, I think, to do this.
We don't believe we'd have to tear anybody's down, but we would be close to homes. Yes.
Be almost on top of them, some places down there.
Yeah, and the idea was we would not. Carpenter Lane would be closed except to the residents that live along it, and they would, as we work our way down the street from one end to the other, they would come in on one side of us, or have to go around and come in off the other side. And then when we're in front of particular houses, we would be doing coordination with them to coordinate getting in and out. So it would be a tight work area. Yes.
Okay. Would that answer your questions, Mike?
Yes, it does.
Okay, great. I see the coast. You still have your hand raised, and Jane, and okay, your hand is down. Pat Holt, did you have another question, or?
Yeah, I do, and it's not so much a question, but I guess it's kind of a statement and a question. Since my loading dock is on Carpenter Lane, east of Cottrell Road, and so far since January 1 of 20, we have run 135 semis to our loading dock that handles 5 trucks at one time. It's going to be really difficult to get semis down there if you guys do this. What's it going to do to my commerce?
Do you do that all year long?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. That's exactly the kind of information we're looking for. So that help. I mean, we're looking at trying to keep traffic, moving on Dodge Park, but no, hearing that's going to impact you is good information. So.
Yeah, we ship you around, and we're shipping all across the contiguous United States, and if we don't, that essentially closes our business.
Yep. No, that's good to hear. I mean, that's good input. So we note that. Every comment I've heard is Carpenter Lane going down Carpenter Lane causes a lot of problems. So
it does. I feel bad for the people going down that live on Dodge Park. Their problem is there's fewer of them, and they're not part of this meeting, I guess. But for me, it is a big financial issue, and it raises a lot of concerns. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Well, and we will be continuing to get input from people through the fall on these options. So.
Yes, you guys are just the first stop on our road show. So, let's see. Dean and Pat had made a comment that they would hate to see our neighbors on Carpenter Lane so drastically affected. So that's another comment against that Carpenter Lane option. I think we can move. Carol, I just want to check in with the coast again. I know you said you had problems with not raising your hand. I just want to make sure that you don't have still have a question.
Yeah, we don't have a question. I don't know how to turn it off.
Okay, that's okay. I just want to make sure. If you do have a question, just type, so I know, just type in the chat and let me know that you have a question. It is 7:47. Well, just maybe you can, we had talked a little bit about the comments already, so I don't know, you can probably just quickly go through these next slides, Ken?
Yep. So Altman will also be, I mean, I know we talked a lot about Carpenter Lane. Altman will have a lot of the same issues, but it'll be rolling through there. So we would close part of Dodge Park. The sizes, these would likely be 66-inch pipes. We talked a lot about Carpenter Lane and sidewalks, disruptions to homeowners. So I think, so we will be, continuing to talk to people out there, and there's a lot of businesses that use the road, so we will continue to be getting their input, and we will be hiring the CMTC so we can communicate that with them when we're talking about how we're going to stage all this and get it all done. So traffic safety, I mean, and that's, if we close Dodge Park, that will make that portion easier to keep people out of, other than the local residents that live along there. And we would probably do something similar on Altman. We would keep it to local residents only. So, and we do have that one section where we're going across private property. So I think we can click to the next slide. Did Mike have a question? I saw.
No, I was just going to say, if you were to use Dodge, if you shut it down for a year, it'd make it a lot quieter out here finally. For all the guys racing up and down the street.
That's one vote for Dodge Park, I think.
Yeah. Yep. I think. Go ahead.
This Mike, I have a question. If we put two 66-inch water pipes in, is the plant going to get smaller, or is that still going to cover the 140 million gallons?
So 266
sounds like it's not enough.
266-inch pipes on the treated water side, so the side coming out of the plant, will handle the 145 million gallons a day plus future growth.
Okay.
So, yep.
Thank you.
Yep. We talked a lot about traffic impacts, so I think we can move on. I think we've got a pretty good idea where people stand on that. We can go to the next slide. And we talked a little bit about, so we're going to be continuing to talk to people about nursery impacts and school bus drivers, commuters, emergency vehicle response, where they go. So we're going to be continuing to have those discussions. I don't believe the county would, the county rules may let us work on a Sunday, but I don't believe we would ever be working on a Sunday. And we'll have more conversations with people as we continue this about, what our work hours are and what days of the week we work. But yeah, I think Sundays are pretty much off the table, but so long days being a different issue. So we can talk about that more at a later time, I think. We're going to go to the next one. So I think just quickly, we're planning, we're evaluating the alternatives. We're going to be selecting one. When we get into design, we'll be looking at a lot more of the detail, exactly where things are, defining where it is, what we need to get in, where we need to get to for access to be able to build it, what the traffic impacts are, what easements we need, what permits we need, and all that type of stuff. And then once we get into construction, it will be where the rubber meets the road, actually digging stuff up. And we'll be continuing to talk to people through the whole process. So jump to the next, I think the next slide is the last slide for, yep. So.
All right, that's me. Any lingering questions for Ken while he's still on the hot seat? Okay, not seeing any hands here. And, you know, as always, you can email me or call me, and I don't know all the answers, but I know a lot of the people that do. So I'm happy to facilitate getting any of the questions answered that haven't been answered tonight. Thanks, Ken, for hanging in there through this extended meeting. Usually before we close, I like to get your feedback on this discussion format. And I know in the survey we sent prior to this meeting, we received a comment about meeting in person. And I know that was brought up at the last meeting as well. But, you know, unfortunately, we're just not in a position to be able to do that right now. The city priority is slowing the COVID spread. And unfortunately, we're just not there yet. So we'll continue with these meetings, but we online, but we are open to, you know, any other sort of ideas that you might have. I know was also a comment about having an open dialogue setting for residents. And our next steps in this process, can you go to the next slide, Aubrey? So next month, we're going to be talking about the facility layout and the environment. And then in September, we're going to have an online open house. And we're looking at different ways we can make this more of an engaging conversation with everybody in the community through that open house. But if there's anything else that you have suggestions about, we're open to hearing those. And, you know, we highly encourage you to let other neighbors know. We've been sending out these surveys and posting this meeting and the meetings after, or the meeting materials on our website, and we send out a notification to let people know that that's available. We send multiple notifications out, and you know, if you could help us by, you know, letting your neighbors know that this information exists and that they can give their input there. All this information will be recapping at the open house, and we'll still be taking comments and feedback on all of the design information that we've talked about so far at that open house. So if anybody has any comments or thoughts about that now, I'm happy to take them.
Benita?
Yeah.
Why don't we, the flyers for across from our house,
Mm-hmm.
It has been empty for a long time. I think if you put in, you know, that information into that flyer box, it'll get out to some people because they're still coming to it.
Okay. We'll definitely make sure that gets filled up.
Benita?
Yeah.
John? Yeah, I think if it didn't get filled up this afternoon, it will be filled up tomorrow. I gave the flyers to somebody to put in there. And so if it's not there tonight, it will be filled up again tomorrow.
All right. Thanks, Sean. I appreciate your help getting those out.
Yeah, just FYI, there are since this has all started, and especially the last 8 months or so, the number of people driving to the end of Carpenter Lane has increased probably tenfold. I think just to see what's going on down there. So they would be helpful.
All right. We will make sure that box gets filled and continues to be filled. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to see there yet. Anybody else have any parting words or final comments about any of the things we've talked about or future meetings? All right, looks good. We're only a half hour behind schedule. It's no big deal. You guys did great. We really appreciate your input. And I think Ken's got a lot of information he could take back to the team and start to input that into the considerations. And we're gonna, in about a week, we'll be sending out that survey for the community, and with your help, there'll be some modifications so we can make sure that those maps are a little bit more clear for people. But with that, oh, looks like I have one more new message. Oh, yeah, that's Kim saying you're welcome. And David, did you have any last things you wanted to say?
I just wanted to say thank you again for sticking with us, because this is really valuable conversation. So I think these last 2 meetings we've had, being able to get a little bit of a dialogue going. I realize it's a little harder when we're not in person, but I think it's been working. So we appreciate your comments and your feedback. I want to thank Ken for all the hard work he's been doing to put this information together. Hopefully, it sounded like we got a number of questions answered, but do keep the questions coming, because this is still evolving as we get to the point of trying to make our decisions. We value your input, and we really appreciate it. So thank you again. I realize it's middle of summer here, so we appreciate you sticking with us this evening, and hope you have a great month of July and find some fun things to do.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the input. It is very helpful. So.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.